7A, Budget Review Treasurer Department. We'll have, we can start with the Finance Director.
The budget for the Treasurer's Office can be found on page C67. Not a whole lot going on in the budget for the Treasurer's Office. It's about a $2.3 million budget. That's down about 4% from 2017. That's primarily in the area of the pension and retiree health care chargebacks that we've mentioned numerous times with other departments. You'll notice that there was a $14,000 capital outlay item in 2017, sort of a one-time expense to replace some old furniture, mainly chairs, in the office. I think this building is almost 20 years old, and some of the chairs down there were original with the building. So that money was taken out of supplies and services, mainly postage this year. The treasurer's asking for additional money in supplies and services in 18 regarding credit card fees, or bank fees, I'm sorry, not credit card fees, bank fees. So in the past, and Mr. Biondo can explain this in greater detail or correct me if I'm incorrect, but we had what's called a compensating balance at the bank, where we had so much money that wasn't earning interest, and then they were offsetting our bank fees against the interest that we didn't earn, if you will. So what we're doing now is the Treasurer's Office has determined that it's in the best interest of the county to take that money and invest it in the market, or in, you know, CDs or commercial paper, et cetera, and pay the bank fees. So we've included those in the supplies and services. What you'll see is there's an offsetting increase in interest revenue in non-departmental. It doesn't show up in the Treasurer's Office, but we increased the revenue for interest income by $75,000 for the year. And there's about a $15,000 increase in bank fees. So that's really kind of what's going on with the treasurer there. Mr. Biondo and Larry Lee, the investment officer, are here to discuss the budget in more detail.
Okay, so Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. Well, do you want to do your presentation first?
Yeah. Would it be all right if I made a short presentation? It'll just be a few brief comments. Thank you. I'd like to begin by thanking Steve and his team in the finance department. They've been great to work with throughout this process. I know I pestered them quite a bit over the last few months with numerous phone calls on the budget process to get prepared to present this today, obviously. We are asking all of you to support us in approving this budget, representing a 3.59% cut as compared to the amended budget for this year. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the process and then dig into some of the line items, and then introduce you to our new investment officer, who will come up and briefly describe why we're going to be adding the bank fee line item and how that will allow us to have more flexibility with our investment strategies. Briefly speaking, Steve did a great job summarizing what's really driving the cut in the budget. When we were first going through this, the treasurer indicated to me, stressed to me that every dollar counts, and we got to make sure that we can justify every dollar being spent. Treasurer Rocca's background is basically as a self-employed small business owner. I have a similar background, and we understand that people are tight for money, and we better justify every dollar that we're asking for. And we believe that every dollar that we are asking for can be justified, and we know that because we talked to our staff. We roundtabled this with all our department heads. We went through every line item as a group and talked about, what can we do to save more money in this line item? Do we really have to increase this particular line item by X amount of dollars? We did that over several weeks, and this is ultimately the budget that we produced. I want to briefly touch on supply and services, because even though we have a 3.6% cut in the budget, really the supplies and services line will be going up approximately a little over $30,000. Now, half of that is being driven by the line item for bank fees, and like I said, we'll get to that in a minute, but the rest of it are for various things. An 8,500 piece of that is for employee training. We hadn't done as much employee training as we had liked to do this year with the transition process and implementing a new tax reversion department. And so that's something we're going to be doing more as we head into we are in the fall, but in the winter, and that's something we want to continue in the future. We have quite a few key people in the treasurer's office that are in the drop program, and we anticipate them leaving really in the next 2 or 3 years. We're going to lose probably 4 or 5. So, seeing that we're going to have key people leaving, we want to make sure that we have the ability to train some of the new people in the office to hopefully follow in their footsteps when those positions get posted. One last thing I wanted to cover before I turn it over to our investment officer was in the supplemental worksheet, which, to be honest, this is the first time I had to review one. I never knew the county did this. I know it was a relatively new feature, and I think it's great to have something as far as what the metrics are to measure performance. As you can see, I just would point out that for the key performance metrics section of the document, as you can tell, it's been itching a little bit each year as far as cost per capita, and my anticipation is that for 2017 it'll end up a little bit below the 2.72 that's indicated there. One last item I want to bring your attention to is the 2018 position status portion of the document. You'll see that on line 1 of that section, we have tax collection officer listed as the name of the position. What happened was back in June, well, this would have been the month prior, Maureen Alexandrowitz, who's the tax collection administrator for the office, she was the lady that we promoted into that position. That was the first hiring decision we made, been with the county for over 30 years. Her first top recommendation to us was to set up a tax reversion department. Everyone knows the treasurer's office is involved with the tax foreclosure process. In the past, there was no specific department in the treasurer's office that dealt with that role. And it's a very technical role. You got to make sure you hit your notice requirements by certain dates. And quite frankly, you got to do it in a timely manner. In order to make sure that we had enough time to do what we needed to do towards the end of this year, the recommendation from our staff was to change one of the positions of account clerk 4 to tax collection officer, so that we would have 2 tax collection officers, and with the tax collection administrator form a new tax reversion department. So I'm going a little deep on this one point, but I think it's important to point out that although we're asking basically for the same classifications, number of classifications, there is a change. We are changing the account clerk 4 to the tax collection officer. It was done mid-year in the amended budget, but I wanted to highlight that because none of you have had an opportunity to really question the Treasurer's Department on that, so I wanted to make sure that you guys knew about it and could ask me any questions on that. But to give you an example, the new tax reversion department, we're already seeing the fruits of that innovation in the office. It's basically giving us an additional 2 to 3 weeks to do what we need to do with the title companies, that basically to prepare the notices. So that's really all I had to cover. I want to invite Larry Lee, our investment officer, to talk about why we're adding the bank fee line item, and I'll let him take it from here.
Hello, everyone. So in 2016 is the first year that we incurred bank fees for our savings or our compensating account. We made the decision to have a high enough balance with bank accounts to eliminate fees through the previous treasurers. When we ran the analysis, it was shown that if we incurred bank fees, we actually stood to make more profit by investing the funds than keeping them locked up to eliminate the fees. In 2016, we had $11,398 in bank fees. To eliminate those fees, we had to keep a daily average balance of $29 million, just over $29 million. By reducing our daily average balance to about $20 million, we're able to increase our government pool investment profits to $93,000 a year. That absolutely covered all the $11,000. What we did also to prevent or safeguard us from running out of funds is to reestablish our forecasting. Previous investment strategies forecasted monthly. So all our maturities, investment maturities, would typically mature at the end of the month. We've now done it so it's matured towards payroll. These are our big weeks that we need a lot of money. On any given week, we have about $15 million daily available to cover funds, fees, and any other charges. With our current portfolio, now we have roughly about $8 additional million that we can play with that actually revolves on maturities each month. As I said, it's, oh, sorry, I lost my place. The compensating account, actually, the way that it eliminated the funds is they offered a 0.0045 basis points. Our government pools on Public Act 20 allows us to invest it in safe funds, which automatically gives us a 0.095, almost double the basis point. So as I said, it was a no-brain decision to actually put that money into actual investments so we could pull back out and have more money available to invest, bringing us additional yearly revenue. So if there's any questions, I'd love to explain.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. You answered almost all my questions. Just again, review for us what type of investments you'd be putting that money in.
So, all right, so on the basis is called our government pool accounts. This is a revolving accounts, it's short-term funds under 30 days. It keeps us as liquid as possible. It's basically like a savings account that earns us interest rates before the money sat in an account that earned the bank interest rates, so we couldn't touch it. Beyond that, any excess of funds, we only invest in A1, P1 level, which is Public Act 20, safe investments of commercial papers and certificates of deposit. So as I said, we're not looking to, go into any type of risky investments. They're very safe. We also typically, with commercial paper, we don't invest out past 270 days. On our CDs, we actually will just forecast it for what our needs are, anywhere from 30 days to up to a year. Those ones are a little bit further out, but those are, again, bigger funds that we can tell, like our 611 account, that we don't need any funds until May for June payments. We're able to take those and put them out much further.
So commercial paper is basically what you're doing with it.
Commercial, well, no, we have an equal share of commercial paper and CD, certificate deposits.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you. Commissioner Romano?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll talk to that gentleman. I'm sorry.
I apologize.
Your name again?
Larry.
Larry. Okay, Larry. Which bank do we deal with?
We actually have a list of 9 banks that we invest with. Chase is our primary.
The service fees, the ones that charge us the service? Chase Bank.
Yes.
This situation happened in the municipality I was in, exactly what you're just saying. And our treasurer starts shopping banks, and lo and behold, you're telling me that we're keeping an average balance, and I'm not sure if you said 91 million or 93 million?
No, that 91,000 was what we made off of profit by reducing from an average of 29 million.
How much did we have to keep on deposit?
Currently, we have 20 million, between 15 and 20 average daily.
With Chase?
With Chase.
And for that, we're still paying 11,000?
With 11,000.
Okay. I know this might sound foolish to you. Have you ever shopped? Because what we did is our treasurer shopped banks, and lo and behold, there's numerous amount of banks that said, "Whoa, we won't charge you anywhere near that kind of money." Have you tried that?
We have, but what we get through Chase, some of the perks, like our armored car service, we do not pay for our armored car service, which is, I do not have the exact dollar amount,
okay.
But it's an expensive fee. They cover that for us. So some of the perks that we do have, though we have to, now the 15 million, that's just our choice. We can choose to go lower. There are weeks that days that I've dropped it down to around $4 million, depending on investments. But the only reason we've stayed with Chase right now is because of some of the services that they provide, that they choose to eat the costs.
So that's some of the perks that we get for that.
Yes.
Okay, the other question I have is, and I guess I'll have them, thank you, Larry. I think I need Mr. Biondo.
Why don't you stay right here in case some of the commissioners have other questions?
Hi, Mr. Biondo.
Hello,
Nice
Commissioner.
to see you. Where's Mr. Rocca?
He wasn't available today, but he thought I could handle this. And
We know you
hopefully
can
don't
handle
prove
it.
him wrong.
There's no doubt in my mind you can handle it, Mr. Biondo. You had mentioned this, you put the bank fees in supplies and services, and that's why that amount went up.
Correct.
So why don't we just have a separate line item strictly for bank fees, so it doesn't surprise us, we'll know exactly what you're talking about? Just a suggestion, just a thought in mind. The other one is, when you talk to me about adding this additional tax collector, and we're showing that the foreclosures have gone down, yet you added another tax collector, and you explain why, because of that position that you moved that person up on. I guess my question is, when they did this, what are the actual duties of that actual tax collector in this new position that you put her?
Correct.
Or him? Was it
Yep.
her or him?
It's a her.
It's a her.
So just to kind of reiterate why we did this, you know, in order for us to meet our notice requirements, obviously we have to do our due diligence, we have to work with the title companies, and obviously there's a time constraint to do all that title work. In the past, we, based on what our employees were telling us, they were cutting it kind of close in terms of getting all that work ready and being ready for the December mailing, which has to be done so that we can proceed with the tax foreclosure process going into the new year. What this process allows us to do is to basically move up the time for them to do what they need to do. Because in the past, the work was still being done, except that they would have the tax collection administrator do it, the tax collection officer, and they would randomly pull somebody from one of the other departments, and it was very inefficient. Now, this person, what their job duties are exactly the same job duties as the first tax collection officer. And just so you guys know, we are contracted with Chirco and Greco Title, and they do a lot of title work for us. And it made sense from a management perspective to improve efficiency to have one tax collection officer reviewing the Chirco title work product, and then the other tax collection officer reviewing the Greco title work. So that's the thinking behind that. The job requirements are the same. It's above and beyond what an account clerk does, and what this person was doing was essentially doing this job anyways. And really what this was acknowledging that she was doing the job of a tax collection officer and not an account clerk, and hopefully that answered your question.
It certainly does. I just want to add to that, you know, I think it's commendable that you stayed within your budget, pretty darn close to it, put that employee into a new position showing two. You know, if all the departments do that, we save a lot of money. Nice job, Mr. Biondo.
We are trying to save money, and just so we're clear, on the upper salary range between these two positions, we're talking an additional $5,000. So I thought that would be relevant for you guys to know as well.
My best to Mr. Rocca. Thank you.
Thank you,
That's
sir.
all I have. Thanks, Chair.
Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Joe, this is probably for Steve, I'm not sure. Steve, looking at the budget, you have your 2017 amended. The dollar figure is exactly the same that was approved by the Board of Commissioners back last year. With that said, there's a line item that's been moved of supplies and services of $14,500 out of supplies and services and moved down to capital outlay. What was the move from supplies and services to capital outlay? What was that $15,500?
Yep.
So in the 2017 adopted, the numbers are exactly the same as what's shown here to the Board of Commissioners.
Right. It was for furniture, the chairs I mentioned earlier.
So that's where that line
Yeah.
item came from?
Yeah.
And just so you guys know, those chairs, I believe all of them were from when the building was put in. I had some people putting donuts on these chairs.
No, I get it.
Yeah, okay.
I
All
wanted
right.
to make sure, because the number didn't change, it says amended. It's the
Yeah.
same number, but it's shifted to the area. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Drollet.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your presentation. And most of my questions were asked and answered by several of the commissioners. Just, I guess, one remaining question for me then, and that's, you mentioned, I think it was, Joe, you may have mentioned that there's a spate of training that's going to be upcoming that has been included in the supplies and services budget. Maybe this is something Stephen asked, but why wouldn't that be under the conferences and training line of the budget? And if it's not, why do we still have, budgeting, $16,000 for training when we've historically, generally over the years never spent more than $2,500? I know we budgeted $17,000 in 2017. I don't know what we're at, but maybe that's for Steve. Why that's not in the training component of the budget if it's going to be for training, and instead it's in the.
I will have to follow up with you on that. I gotta believe that it's in training, that the training is training. I just don't know exactly. I need to I guess,
Okay.
confer with.
So
Mr.
maybe it's
Biondo
not in
what's
the,
going on.
not in
And
the
what-
supplies and services, the training would not
Right,
be
it
in
should be
there.
in training. I just want to confirm that before I,
Okay.
finalize my response to that. Remember, in 2015 and 2016, there was a different treasurer,
Right.
so there's no money spent in those years. So,
We'll make sure we follow up on that with you, okay, Commissioner, if that's okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yep. That's all I have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Before I call on Commissioner Duge, let me go ahead and get a motion to receive and file. Moved by Carabelli, supported by Gillette. Thank you, Commissioner Duge.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good presentation. But I agree with Commissioner Romano, and I'd really like to see if Chase is charging us outrageous amounts, if Chase is charging us fees and we're keeping 20 million minimum in their facility, I have to imagine that there are a whole bunch of other financial institutions that would be more than happy to have at least 20 million in deposits in their facility and not charge us for the armored vehicles or otherwise. I mean, for that kind of money, we could buy our own armored vehicle.
The $20 million isn't a set fee, it's revolving, so on any given day.
Yeah, I'm
I
sorry.
apologize.
There we go.
No, it's all right. The $20 million isn't a locked-in amount. As I said, we do drop that amount down. There are weeks that we'll actually have less than $4 million. It has to be an averaged amount of, at the time, for $29 million.
I understand, but listen to what you just said. We have to go down to 4 million. Okay, there have got to be financial institutions in Macomb County that would be more than happy to have, at a minimum, $4 million in their bottom line and up to over 20 million. And I would suggest that you look into that, because it's not that I'm anti-fee, although I am anti-fee. Paying for something at this level makes no sense to me at all. And if there's a financial institution that has access to that kind of money on a monthly basis, I mean, shame on them for charging fees in the first place. They ought to be paying us a really decent interest rate for keeping our money there in the first place. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, may I respond just briefly? I think-
Briefly, because
Okay.
we have a lot of budget reviews, and
I think
I
that,
quite frankly thought this one would go about 60 seconds, so go ahead.
Well, just real briefly, I appreciate the commissioner's concern. I mean, our jobs is to get the best deal for the county residents every day, and we will certainly explore that. I will say this, in addition to the armored transports, I know for the money market account, they do typically give us more basis points than the going rate, so to speak. So it's complicated, but you're right, we should be looking at that, and we will.
Yeah.
And I'll be happy to do that and let you know, when we look at all the parts to the contractual relationship with JP Morgan, once you see the big picture, then we can go from there to evaluate whether it's a good deal or not.
That's fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Chair Smith.
Thank you. Briefly, I just wanted to say thank you for your presentation, and I want to say how much I appreciate you guys coming in here, talking about everything that you've done to reduce your fees and your costs and increase things and bring us a budget that's less than last year. So I just wanted to compliment you on that and say thank you, and hopefully we can move on with this supposedly easy budget to pass, to move on. Thanks.
Seeing no more questions, Commissioner Gillette.
I forgot to thank you for keeping the budget under the rate of inflation. So thank you so much. In fact, a cut, so thank you.
Absolutely.
Seeing nothing else, please vote on your iPad. Wow. What is up with this thing anyway?
Nice job. Did you vote against it?
All right, that was me, so I know everybody. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Appreciate it too. Have a nice day, guys.